Welcome back to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Go Shave. Back in 2010, I moved to a neighboring town and got my first real job, working for the Hamburger Emperor. About halfway through my 11-month stay, working in only the kitchen, we had a semi-surprise manager, aka Big Boss, visit. It was about an hour's drive, so we were informed that they were on their way. This was a very small town, and on most days, I would ask my roommate to drop me off, or I would simply walk the 30 minutes it took to get from one end of the town to the other. On the day of note, I had been dropped off for my shift around noon, as I was usually scheduled for lunch rushes. After working for about 2 hours, the news came in, and suddenly, nothing is clean or good enough. Now, I've heard fast food health inspection horror stories, but I have none of my own. We kept a clean ship. Lower management, hereby Little Boss, was just looking for anything and everything, and in their triggered state wasn't afraid to split hairs. And in my case, hair was their primary focus. My adolescent hormones had the audacity of finally mustering up enough facial hair at 19 that one could reasonably call it a 5 o'clock shadow, without being completely laughed out of the room. Knowing full well my rights situation, but obviously not thinking about it, Little Boss requested that I go home to shave and come back. I said yes sir, and off I went, on foot. After walking home for about 15 minutes, I texted my roommate, who promptly picked me up. I shaved, we got lunch, and then we drove around another 40 minutes of me on the clock, while we did dumb college kid stuff. After about 90 minutes to 2 hours, my roommate dropped me a block away, and I walked back in. Little Boss was upset, flying around, trying to make everything look seamless while being scrutinized by Big Boss. None of my peers noticed me. They are all keeping their nose down, as to not be singled out and get made an example of, for Little Boss to save face and look good. You know how these things go. With all eyes on us, Little Boss just started laying into me. I just calmly stated it's a 30-minute walk both ways, and I was prioritizing having to shave. Big Boss asked Little Boss what's up, inquiring towards the situation at hand. Before turning away, Little Boss mumbled something to me about how I need to be more upfront about things, and can't just take off for 2 hours without telling anyone. They both went into the tiny office, and I never heard about it again. With the high turnover rate these places have a reputation for, there were only a couple of people left who even remembered. Big Boss is the one who got me the job. The next story is called Assistant Know-It-All. At my most recent former employer, a home improvement store, I worked in receiving, mostly unloading trucks with a forklift. About 2 years into my time there, we got a new assistant store manager. Let's call him Gary. This guy came in and thought he knew everything. Micromanaging, changing SOP, etc. Everything he said was right. So one day, a truck is in the process of backing down the ramp to our receiving docks. But there's a problem with the brakes, and the wheels are just dragging. Since my job at that moment is wait until the truck comes in and unload it. Once it does, there's literally nothing I can really do, apart from giving the dude good vibes from my seat. To be clear, the problem was not any failure on the driver's part, just bad luck with the hoses. At this time of day, we have 2 people on the clock in receiving. Me on one forklift, waiting for the truck, and my department manager on another, helping out in the outside yard, because 2 propane forklifts were disabled, and they had 2 lumber trucks show up at the same time. We only had 2 electric forks, and they were the only ones that could be inside the building. So basically, I'm literally all alone on the only available forklift that can unload the truck, which is fine. At the same time, we only had 1 dock of 3 available for live loads, because one already had an unhooked trailer and the other was broken. So while we are understaffed and short equipment, and while the driver is trying to deal with his truck, Gary walks into receiving with 2 other department managers. and sees me sitting on the forklift, basically just twiddling my thumbs as I watch the driver. I can understand how it might look like I'm messing off, since I kind of am, but not really. Why are you just sitting there? Gary asks me, waiting for the truck to back up, I say. He says, while you're waiting, you can do other things. I look out the dock door and see the driver comes out from between the truck and trailer and get back in the cab. So I say, but he's almost got it. He'll be docked in like a minute. And in that minute, you can do other things. I've had more than my share of bad leaders in my life. And I can tell by Gary's tone and body language that nothing is going to shake him from this attitude. So I just say, you got it. What should I do while I wait? Gary says, go outside and help unload one of the lumber trucks. I say, for how long? Sounding annoyed, he waves his hands in a shooting motion and says, for as long as it takes. Now go. Then he walks away. The two department managers look at each other, look at me, smile, and follow after him. They know what's about to happen. I spin the forklift around and zip out through the big overhead door into the outside yard to help with the lumber trucks. As I do this, I hear the trailer back into the dock. But that doesn't matter, because Gary gave me a mission. I make it to where the lumber trucks are parked in the yard, and my department manager drives over next to me. He says, why are you out here? Isn't the truck docking? I nod. Gary told me I needed to be out here helping while I raid. He was very insistent. I slowly emphasized the last two words. My manager just smiles, turns around, and continues to unload. I start helping. A stack of studs here, a bundle of trusses there, and I'm doing my part to empty these flatbeds of wood. While this is happening, I hear the gate attendant for the outside yard radio that we have another truck waiting to come in. I radio back that it's gonna have to wait until the other truck is gone. Then another truck shows up, and another. In the 20 minutes I've been outside, 4 trucks, besides the one that is now in the dock, have arrived to be unloaded in our single dock. And every time I tell the gate that they have to raid. At this point, the general store manager, Mike, finally hears what's happening over the radio and cuts in. Hey, what's going on? Are we not unloading the truck in receiving? I radio back and say, I'll be there in just a second. I put the load I've got on my times where it needs to go and haul back to receiving. As I drive into the bay, Mike and Gary are both standing there, with the driver next to them. I zip to them and hold my hand out for the driver's paperwork. He hands it to me as Gary says, what is taking you so long? Why haven't you started unloading yet? You told me to help on the lumber trucks while I raid. I say. Gary sputters and says, I meant until this truck was in the dock. I look at Mike and then back to Gary. I asked you for how long, and you said for as long as it takes. I didn't say that. I look at him and he looks at me like he's staring, and I like taking theirs. I name the 2 department managers who were written when he told me and say, we all heard you say it. You were very clear. His face turns the color of an apple. He opens his mouth, but Mike puts a hand on his arm and stops him. Mike looks at me and says, get it sorted fast, okay? I nod and get started as Mike walks away with Gary, fuming beside him. I didn't hear their conversation because I was working on my forklift. But word got back to me that Mike told Gary he would never again be allowed to question anything anyone in receiving does. Over the next year that Gary was with us, he abided by that directive, though he did feel entitled to shoot me a dirty glance or 20 every so often. Not that I cared, because I had trucks to unload. The last story is called 3 Days a Week. There are a number of companies and agencies in the US that are implementing stricter office policies, mostly requiring 3 days to be spent in person at an office location. Although there are a lot of good reasons for this: stimulate the local economy, engage with teammates, improve corporate culture, the actual mechanisms for measuring this are, well, poorly implemented. My corporate overlords have instigated such a policy. Needless to say, being in the office 3 days a week has been met with obvious malicious compliance. My team has taken it to heart, and so 3 times a week, each person treks to the office on public transit, they swipe their badges, say hi, and have a brief meeting. Then all track home. The corporate bean counters see office policy met. I see 20% lost productivity from the team on those 3 days. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.